Amelia Brooks had always been the quiet one, the intern no one really noticed, the girl whose soft voice often got drowned out in the noisy rhythm of corporate life. At Hartwell and Company, a towering marketing firm with glass walls and polished floors, she moved like a shadow, efficient and invisible. Her days were filled with small, thankless tasks, organizing presentation slides, proofreading campaign drafts, and fetching coffee for executives who rarely looked up when they said, "Thanks." She didn't mind, not really. After all, she had long made peace with silence. Words had never come easily to her, and in a world where confidence was currency, she had learned to survive with gentle smiles and quiet competence. It was a gray Tuesday morning when everything changed. Rain pattered softly against the windows, and the lobby buzzed with hurried footsteps as employees rushed to prepare for an important investor meeting. Amelia, clutching a stack of folders, was making her way toward the conference room when something by the reception desk caught her eye. A man stood there, gray-haired, distinguished, holding a small leather folder, and yet, something about his expression made her stop. He was gesturing with his hands, his brow furrowed in frustration. The receptionist, a young woman named Clara, looked equally lost. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, raising her voice unnecessarily. "I don't understand." Amelia froze mid-step. She recognized those gestures, the rhythm of his hands, the shapes of his fingers. It was sign language. She hadn't used it in years, not since her high school days volunteering at a community center for the hearing impaired. But even after all this time, her mind still remembered. A small pulse of adrenaline raced through her chest. Should she step in? What if she made a fool of herself? What if her signing was rusty? Still, as the man's shoulders drooped in visible disappointment, Amelia made her decision before fear could stop her. She approached carefully, setting her folders aside. "Excuse me," she said softly to Clara before turning toward the man. With trembling hands, she signed, "Do you need help?" For a split second, his eyes widened in surprise, and then softened in relief. He signed back quickly, his hands graceful and sure. "Yes. I'm here to see Mr. Hartwell. I think I'm a little early." Amelia smiled, the tension melting from her shoulders. She signed, "That's okay. You can wait here. Would you like some coffee or tea?" He chuckled silently, shaking his head and signing, "Just water, thank you." Amelia nodded, signaling Clara to fetch a bottle of water. The receptionist, still watching in amazement, mouthed a silent, "Wow." Amelia ignored the curious stares from nearby employees. For once, her focus wasn't on herself or her nervousness, it was on helping someone else feel understood. They continued their conversation quietly. His name was Mr. Lane, and he had been an investor with Hartwell and Company for years. "It's nice to see a familiar face," he signed with a grin. Amelia laughed softly, replying, "I'm new here, but it's nice to meet you." When she finally guided him toward the elevator, her heart felt strangely light. For the first time in months, she hadn't been afraid of being seen. What she didn't know was that she was being seen, by someone far above. On the top floor, behind a pane of glass, Elliot Hartwell, the CEO himself, had paused mid-conversation during his morning briefing. His sharp blue eyes had caught sight of the young intern below, her hands moving with fluid precision as she signed to the guest. He recognized Mr. Lane instantly, and realized what he was witnessing. There was something profoundly graceful about the girl's quiet confidence, the way she bridged the gap of silence without hesitation. As she disappeared down the hall, Elliot leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. Amelia returned to her cubicle moments later, cheeks still warm from the encounter, unaware that her small act of kindness had just set something extraordinary into motion, something that would soon change her life forever. The next morning, the air in the office felt strangely charged. Amelia noticed it the moment she stepped out of the elevator, hushed voices, sidelong glances, and that peculiar hum of gossip that always seemed to spread faster than reason. She adjusted the strap of her bag nervously, clutching her coffee cup as she made her way to her desk. Something was different, but she couldn't quite place it until the receptionist, Clara, called out, "Hey, Amelia, you might want to check your email." The tone in her voice was teasing, almost amused. Amelia blinked, confused, and opened her laptop. The usual flood of corporate messages filled her inbox, project reminders, calendar updates, and then one that made her heart skip. It was from Elliot Hartwell, the CEO himself. The subject line read simply, "Meeting request, 9:30 a.m. Her breath caught. A meeting with the CEO? That couldn't be right. Maybe it was a mistake, or maybe the message was meant for someone else. She rechecked the sender. No, it was directly addressed to her. Amelia's heart began to pound. Had she done something wrong? Maybe stepping in yesterday to help Mr. Lane had crossed some boundary. Maybe she wasn't supposed to interact with visitors without clearance. All morning, she tried to focus on her work, but her trembling hands betrayed her. Her mind ran in anxious circles, crafting one worst-case scenario after another. By the time 9:25 came around, Amelia was a mess of nerves. She checked her reflection in the bathroom mirror, tucked in her blouse, fixed her hair, whispered, "It's okay, just be polite." Then she rode the elevator to the top floor, her stomach twisting with every ding. The CEO's office was sleek and modern, filled with clean lines and city light pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows. A quiet assistant led her inside, and there he was. Elliot Hartwell, tall, poised, and intimidating in the way only powerful people could be. He looked up from his laptop as she entered. "Miss Brooks?" His tone was calm but unreadable. "Yes, sir," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. He gestured toward the chair opposite his desk. "Please, sit." She obeyed, clutching her hands in her lap to stop them from shaking. Elliot leaned back, studying her for a moment that felt like an eternity. Then he said simply, "I saw what you did yesterday." Amelia's heart sank. "I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't mean to interfere. The receptionist couldn't communicate with him, and I just thought." Elliot held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. His expression softened, and to her surprise, he smiled. "Interfere? Miss Brooks, you didn't interfere. You helped." He paused, his voice deep and deliberate. "The man you spoke to is Mr. Lane, one of our company's oldest investors. He's profoundly deaf and has often struggled to communicate during his visits here. Yesterday, he told me it was the first time he felt truly understood in this building." Amelia blinked, caught off guard. He said that?" Elliot nodded. "He did. And he also mentioned how much your kindness meant to him." There was genuine warmth in his voice now, a rare break from the polished professionalism he was known for. "You reminded us of something this company has been missing for a long time, human connection." She didn't know what to say. Her face flushed as she murmured, "I just wanted to help." "That's exactly why it mattered," Elliot said quietly. He tapped a few keys on his laptop and turned the screen toward her. "We've been trying to expand our accessibility initiatives, but we lack the right perspective. You seem to have that instinct. I'd like you to assist me with this project moving forward." Amelia stared at him, stunned. "Assist, you, sir?" He nodded. "You have an eye for empathy, Miss Brooks. That's something I can't teach." When she finally left the office, she walked in a daze. The whispers that had followed her that morning no longer felt threatening, they felt like the beginning of something new. As she stepped into the elevator, she caught her reflection in the mirrored wall. For the first time since joining Hartwell and Company, she didn't see the shy intern no one noticed. She saw someone capable. Someone who mattered. And somewhere high above, behind glass walls, Elliot Hartwell watched her leave with a faint, knowing smile. In the weeks that followed, Amelia's world transformed in ways she never could have imagined. Gone were the quiet, uneventful days of sitting unnoticed behind her computer screen. Now, she found herself in meetings with senior managers, brainstorming ideas, and working directly alongside Elliot Hartwell himself. At first, the attention was overwhelming. Every time Elliot addressed her in front of others, Amelia's pulse would quicken. She was still that shy intern deep down, unsure of how she'd suddenly earned the right to sit among executives. But Elliot treated her not as an intern, but as an equal. He listened to her, valued her input, and gave her space to speak. And somehow, in his calm, steady presence, Amelia began to find her courage. Her new project focused on creating accessibility programs within Hartwell and Company, initiatives to make their services more inclusive for clients and employees with disabilities. Amelia threw herself into the work, designing training programs, suggesting visual-friendly website layouts, and translating company resources into simplified, accessible language. For the first time, she felt her ideas mattered. Her natural empathy, once seen as a weakness, became her greatest strength. She stayed late many nights, scribbling notes and sketching out ideas in her notebook, unaware that Elliot often walked past her office window, quietly watching the glow of her desk lamp with quiet admiration. One afternoon, Elliot stopped by her desk unexpectedly. "You've been working hard," he said, leaning against the doorway with his easy, unhurried confidence. Amelia straightened, flustered. "Oh, I was just finishing up the draft for the accessibility brochure. I wanted to make sure the tone felt friendly but still professional." Elliot smiled faintly. "That's exactly why I wanted you on this. You think about tone. You think about how people feel." His gaze softened as he added, "Most people talk to be heard, Amelia. You communicate to connect." The words lingered in the air like a melody, and Amelia didn't know how to respond. No one had ever said something like that to her before. She simply nodded, shy but glowing inside. By the end of the month, the first employee training was ready. Amelia had helped organize a short course on basic sign language and workplace inclusion. It was optional, but the turnout exceeded expectations. Managers, assistants, and even janitorial staff showed up. Amelia stood at the front, her palms sweating, ready to begin. When Elliot entered the room, she nearly froze. But his reassuring nod gave her courage. She began slowly, demonstrating simple signs: hello, thank you, good morning. Soon, the room was filled with laughter and clumsy attempts at hand gestures. For someone who had always struggled to speak aloud, Amelia found power in teaching others how to communicate without words. Toward the end of the session, a familiar face appeared in the doorway. It was Mr. Lane, the investor she had helped that rainy morning. He was smiling broadly, watching the room full of employees learning to speak his language. Amelia's heart swelled with emotion. Elliot approached him, shook his hand, and then turned to the group. "Everyone," he said, "this is Mr. Lane, the man who inspired this program. And this," he added, placing a hand on Amelia's shoulder, "is the woman who made it happen." A ripple of applause filled the room. Mr. Lane signed something toward her, his expression warm. Amelia smiled and signed back effortlessly, "You're welcome." The entire office watched in silence, realizing how powerful a few gestures could be. After the session ended, Elliot caught up to her in the hallway. "You did wonderfully today," he said. "You made this place feel human again." Amelia's cheeks flushed pink, and she murmured a quiet thank you. As he walked away, she stood still for a moment, letting the moment sink in. For so long, she had believed that silence made her invisible. But now she understood the truth: sometimes, silence could speak louder than words. And in that silence, she had finally found her voice. The annual Leadership Luncheon was the grandest event of the year at Hartwell and Company, an afternoon of speeches, awards, and celebration, where the company's finest achievements were proudly displayed. Amelia had never attended before. Interns didn't get invitations to such high-level gatherings. But this year, as she scanned her inbox, there it was, an embossed digital card bearing her name. For several minutes, she stared at the screen, wondering if it was a mistake. Then came the official memo from Elliot Hartwell's office, confirming her attendance. Her stomach fluttered with both excitement and fear. She spent the next few days preparing quietly, still unsure what role she was meant to play in the event. The day of the luncheon arrived with golden sunlight spilling across the glass windows of the main hall. The space was filled with executives in tailored suits, soft music playing in the background, and the subtle clinking of champagne glasses. Amelia sat near the end of the long table, nervously stirring her drink, wishing she could disappear into the decor. She wasn't used to this kind of attention, the polished smiles, the formal greetings. Every now and then, someone would glance her way with curiosity, whispering, "That's the intern who started the accessibility program." Hearing that still felt surreal. When the clock struck noon, Elliot took the stage. The room immediately fell silent, his commanding presence drawing every eye. Dressed sharply in a dark suit, he stood behind the podium with calm authority, his voice deep and steady as he began. "This year," he said, "Hartwell and Company achieved record growth, expanded into new markets, and built stronger partnerships than ever before. But none of those accomplishments mean anything," he paused, scanning the room, "if we lose sight of the people behind them." Amelia sat straighter, her heart quickening as his gaze drifted her way. "A few months ago," Elliot continued, "one of our interns reminded us what true communication means. She didn't do it through words or presentations, but through empathy." The room murmured softly, and Amelia felt heat rise to her cheeks. When a deaf investor visited our office, she didn't hesitate. She used sign language. Something she had learned years earlier, to make him feel welcome and understood. What seemed like a small act of kindness turned into something far greater. Elliot smiled gently, looking right at her now. Because of that moment, Hartwell and Company launched a company-wide initiative for accessibility and inclusion. It's reshaped how we connect with clients, employees, and communities. And it all began with one person who decided to listen in a different way. He extended his hand toward Amelia. "Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in recognizing Amelia Brooks, the heart behind this movement." Applause erupted across the hall. Amelia's throat tightened as she rose to her feet, overwhelmed by emotion. People she barely knew were smiling at her, clapping, nodding with respect. Mr. Lane was seated near the front, his eyes bright with pride as he signed the words, "Thank you." Through the shimmer of tears, she signed back, "You're welcome." Then, to her astonishment, Elliot stepped away from the podium and handed her a small envelope embossed with the company's logo. Inside was a letter, formal but heartfelt, offering her a full-time position as inclusion coordinator. She looked up at him in disbelief, and he said softly, "You've earned it. Hartwell and Company needs voices like yours, quiet, kind, and powerful." As the applause faded and the luncheon moved on, Amelia stood there, still dazed but deeply grateful. All her life, she had struggled to be heard, believing her silence made her invisible. Yet it was that same silence, filled with compassion and understanding, that had changed everything. Later that afternoon, as she stood by the window overlooking the city, Elliot approached her once more. "You didn't just help a visitor that day, Amelia," he said gently. "You helped this company hear the world in a new way." She smiled, the sunlight glinting softly against her eyes. "Maybe," she said, signing the words as she spoke, "we all just needed to learn how to listen." And for the first time in her life, Amelia Brooks felt completely seen, without ever raising her voice.